It was that epic indeed. Welcome to BCIC Rally Barbados 2025 highlights, brought to you by Rock Hard Cement, Vision Equipment Supply, and VP Fuels. Much to cover in these highlights, 3 days of competition, with 3 different overall leaders at the end of each day, starting with 121 drivers and ending with just 67 teams in total. The event lived up to its high attrition rate statistic and kept everyone on their toes down to the very end. This year, the event kicked off at the iconic Bushy Park racing circuit as part of a 3-stage day 1 leg, which would ultimately turn into 2 stages as the infamous Malvern stage would be cancelled due to safety concerns. A further 9 stages on day 2 would round up 12 stages to set somewhat of a half mark of stage mileage. Before things started, we wanted to speak to at least one driver and co-driver to get a sense as to their approach for the night stages and the anticipated wet weather.
Hopefully this weekend, I don't love the conditions, but we're going to try to start good and not bleed too much time, but just be steady, and it's a war of attrition really, this rally, so hopefully we stay in. I definitely prefer the track with the lights. I'm not a big fan of the night. Hopefully all goes well, but Malvern's a nice stage, but the added rain kind of makes you dubious in the night, so yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Adam was brand new to it last year. He's come on a lot in the year that we were here and had a big crash on King of the Hill last year. Unfortunately had a slight off. I took 2 wheels off on the Sunday last year when he was running 3rd. But he has matured, he has learnt more, and he's learning the stages where Rob and his dad and everyone else have been doing it 20-30 years and know the stages, they know the slippy bits and that, where Adam has to learn all this. But we do have a couple of bits in the notes where we've got slippy if wet, so we have got a couple of corners that we've warned on if it's going to rain tonight. Yeah.
Now let's have a look at the top 10 overall and first in each class, starting with the class winners. First up, and first in Clubman 1, would be the pair of Kyle Gill and Gerard Gill. The duo would seem to not put a foot wrong over the 2 days for a commanding lead over fellow competitors Aaron Doyle and Sean Brathwaite. Going into day 3 with just about a 12-second lead over Greg Cozier and Natasha Farnham would be Chris Hode and Alan Alkins, but the pair would be well aware there was still plenty of driving to keep Cozier behind by the end of day 3. First in Clubman 3 at the end of day 2 would be Ryan Wood and Tristian Mapp. The expected duel with then championship leader Kevin Armstrong would not materialise, as Armstrong would find himself parked on the Padmore stage, sidelined with engine issues. The UK duo of Robin Hamilton and Vanessa Hamilton remain the sole competitors in Historic 2, but would indeed put down some impressive times on the overall leaderboard over the 2 days. The limited Historic 1 field would be dominated by Dan Gibson and Dan Moorfield in their Clan Crusader. The pair would go into day 3, knowing they had a significant buffer to keep them ahead without any dramatic events. Sole Group N competitor Larry Doyle and Tommy Doyle would end the day first in group and eager to get on with day 3. Open class would have a substantial increase in drivers this time around. However, Andrew Costin Hurley and Rob Brooke would remain focused and end the day 16 seconds ahead of the nearest class rival. First in Modified 1, with a significant buffer going into day 3, would be Carlos Edwards and Jacob Richards in their Citroën C2. Despite being hotly pursued by Sean Corbin, who had abandoned the flamboyant driving to attack the times, Neil Corbin and Matthew Staffner would end day 2 first in Modified 2. Even with a condensed field, Modified 3 would still produce a competitive class battle that would see Matt Cusins and Stephen Bell first, but by a mere 14 seconds ahead of Jonathan Still and Heath Hazel going into day 3. With an impressive drive that continues from as far back as the Shakedown Rally, the pair of Kurt Thompson and Adam Straker would continue to set the bar for Modified 4. First in class at the end of day 2 by more than a minute would give them significant confidence going into the final leg. Closing off the class battles, Edward Corbin and Jonathan Allen would end day 2 a mere 5 minutes ahead of their closest rival in group, with the car answering every call to increase this gap. Now let's have a look at the top 10 overall teams at the end of day 2. First up would be Adam Malalou and Steve McNulty, who would end day 1 first overall, but would have a significant fall-off throughout day 2. Their highlights being consistent top 10 times as they work towards securing a finish. 9th overall would be the British duo of Rob Swan and Tom Woodburn in their Skoda Fabia Rally 2, who would progressively improve over the 2 days but not enough for a higher placing by end of day. Still on an amazing push with limited seat time, Suleiman Yusuf and Asif Suleiman would end the day 8th overall with 1 top 5 fastest time over the Evans stages. Seventh overall, and quickly coming to grips with the newly acquired Ford Fiesta Mark II, Josh Reed and Mark Jordan seem to be right at home in their new Rally 2 machinery and on their pursuit to secure much-needed Rally 2 championship points due to their late season start. A stall on Special Stage 1 and some other issues on Day 1 would push Dane Skeet all the way back to start Day 2 30th overall. With 8 top 5 stage fastest times, he and Tyler Mayhew would claw back most of the time to end the day 6th overall. Event favourites, Simon John Joseph and Patrick Pivato would end Day 2 with 6 top 5 finishes overall by the end of day, with a 5th overall finish and 1st in the newly created Open RG class. 2nd overall at the end of Day 1 and 5 top 3 stage finishes by the end of Day 2. Mark Maloney and Justin Maloney would secure a 4th overall by end of day. With this performance, sights were set for a top 3 Day 3 finish. 3rd overall, and looking at home in his newly acquired Ford Fiesta Mark II, would be Jeffrey Panton, who would consistently achieve top 10 fastest times for most of the Day 2 stint. Second overall with 2 stage wins over the 2 days of competition would be Kyle Gregg and Craig Yearwood. The pair would have a 15-second deficit to think about going into Day 3 if there was to be any contemplation for a Rally Barbados win. 4th overall at the end of Day 1 was not where Stuart Maloney and Christian Yearwood would have thought they would be. However, with 8 stage wins, any sort of discomfort would evaporate quite quickly by the end of Day 2. 2 days with 2 different leaders at the end of each day. Things switched up for the more technical stages on Day 3. Drivers would have to tackle the 4 kilometers of the infamous Dark Hole stage, 6.9 kilometers further north on the Mount Poyer to Luke Hill stage, and another 4.8 kilometers on the Hopewell to Content stage via Hangman Hill. By the morning of Day 3, the running order would consist of 87 teams ready to challenge the final day. Let's have a look at first in each class and then the top 10 overall. First up would be Robin and Vanessa Hamilton in Historic 2. The pair would seemingly not put a foot wrong in their Ford Escort Mark I on what was a challenging 3 days. Securing a first in Historic 1, and by more than 2 minutes from closest rival, would be Dan Gibson and Dan Moorfield in their impressive Clan Crusader, which has now become an island favourite of sorts. Though attacking this Rally Barbados as the sole competitor in Group N, Larry Doyle and Tommy Doyle would overcome the challenging 3 days with a respectable overall finish. The expected battle in Clubman 3 didn't come to fruition, but even before the word go, one could tell Ryan Wood and Tristan Mapp would certainly be out to enjoy this rally, and the pair illustrated this at every opportunity while taking the Clubman 3 group win. After 3 days of rallying, just 4.43 seconds would decide the class win for the hotly competitive Clubman 2 battle. Greg Koiser and Natasha Farnham would secure well-earned class win, which came down to the final stage to edge out Chris Hode and Alan Alkins. First in Clubman 1 would be Kyle Gill and Jared Gill in their decently prepared Mitsubishi Mirage RS with near 2-minute lead by the end of day 3. In their pocket rocket of a Citroën C2, Carlos Edwards and Jacob Richards would take a convincing win to end day 3 first in Modified 1. Reliability would certainly be the only factor that could catch out Edward Corbin and Jonathan Alleyne. It was precision driving and class-winning times for nearly the entire event that would see them first in Super Modified and now with sufficient points to sit as a joint leader of the BRC Drivers' Championship. A hard-fought battle in the competitive Modified 3 would end with Jonathan Still and Heath Hazel taking the class win from David St. Hill and Ian Grimes by merely 10 seconds after 3 days of intense rallying. It will be one of Stillo's best performances to date, and certainly one he would look back at proudly. Even with the additional talents of Sean Corbin to put on the pressure, BRC Club Chairman Neil Corbin and Matthew Staffner would continue their winning streak to take the Modified 2 win and a substantial points haul that now sees him 4th in the BRC Drivers' Championship. At the start of the year, Kurt Thompson would have insisted that he just wanted to be competitive in Modified 4. Thus far, he has taken class wins on most, if not all, events he has competed in for 2025. With this class win, he now jointly leads the BRC Drivers' Championship. First in the Open RGT group would be Simon John Joseph and Patrick Pivato, who would put on a solid display of driving despite not being able to take overall honours. Now let's look at the top 10 overall at the end of day 3. 10th overall, and we think with more 10th place finishes for this event compared to any other driver would be Roger Hill and Graham Gittins. Being the dynamic duo that they are, they would dust themselves off after any major challenge they encountered over the 3 days. Ninth overall, fastest two-wheel drive and first in Super Modified 2 would be Roger Mayers and Barry Ward, who would illustrate that fighting through all of the challenges prior to Rally Barbados was well worth it. Here is a quick word from Roger.
Car worked flawless, really just keep changing tyres and putting gas in it, and then for the first time in my life, for the last stage, I decided we have this gap. It helped a lot having the live time in, so you know where you're going. Big change with that. And just kind of backed off a little bit, come through, you know, get to the end. Big scream when we crossed the finish line inside. I shouted at Barry Ward. And yeah, here we are.
Second in the WRC group, but with a commendable second, 8th overall would be Kevin Proctor and veteran co-driver Patrick Walsh in their Ford Fiesta S2000T. With an overall finish this time around, Joe Cunningham and Josh Beer would take the WRC class win to end this rally, Barbados 7th overall. A roller coaster of an event for Adam Malalieu. Under the careful guidance of veteran co-driver Steve McNulty, the pair would end the day 6th overall with an equal 6th in the competitive Rally 2 group. Fifth overall with an impressive drive all weekend would be the pair of Suleiman Yusuf and Asif Suleiman. With as much seat time as their fellow Rally 2 competitors, the pundits believe they could be seeing podium finishes in further rounds of that championship. Fourth overall, and 25 seconds shy of a podium finish, would be Rob Swan and Tom Woodburn. The pair would put in a consistent set of fast times for most of the event, and would now set their sights to round 5 of the Rally 2 Championship. In just a handful of events, Josh Reed and Mark Jordan take 3rd overall in Rally Barbados 2025. The pair definitely seemed to be up to the 2024 pace that allowed them to secure a championship win in the Rally 2 Championship. This pace on day 3 also allowed them to secure a round 4 win in the championship as well. 2025 would not further the record of most Rally Barbados wins for Jeffrey Panton and Michael Fennell Jr. However, the pair would end this campaign just a mere 12 seconds off of the win after 3 challenging days. From miraculously being able to compete in the 2024 Rally Barbados after a frantic rebuild of his car following a significant crash, this time around, Carl Gregg and Craig Yearwood would secure a Rally Barbados win which has eluded most for years. Here is what Gregg had to say about this win.
Holding on to something
shock,
solid,
you know. I mean, I'm glad Stuart and Andrew and him, whoever crashed all weekend, are okay, you know. I mean,
the entertainment manager, Mr.
kept my pace this morning.
The
Tried hard.
given by different groups
I'm still in shock.
people.
The truth is, I'm happy. I drove well, drove clean. I drove the best I've ever driven.
And
You know, we kept it clean all weekend.
that was not
I'm still in shock. I mean, I'm a lot of emotions right now.
Over there. Just
You know,
a bit
big up to my
sideways.
sponsors, York.
Are we building up to
You know,
360 before the tunnel? No.
Just
This is on
kept
the
it good
list.
all weekend. You know, Craig was spot on with the notes.
He's thinking something.
You know, we
up.
never put a foot wrong all week. I mean,
He's trying to find the
normally with
natural
rallying, you know, you have a
that he's
1 and 2
forgot
scares,
to fit.
especially for 3
To
days of
make
rallying, and
something
we
really
just
exciting
kept
happen
our
at the
composure
end.
all week. You know, thanks to the team and guys
he's
who helped me all
building up to
weekend.
it, people.
Brett and Neil and James, Ori, you know, those guys really did a fantastic job.
Well, that is it. A challenging Rally Barbados with a near 41% attrition rate that would see 121 starters fall to 67 finishers. The challenge is not just being quick, but certainly finishing quick. At the time of this publication, Andrew Malalieu, Jeffrey Goddard, Christian Yearwood and Stuart Maloney are all on the road to recovery, and knowing each of these gentlemen, we will surely see them around the motorsport circuit in the not-too-distant future. As expected, a Rally Barbados for the record books, one that has shaken up the championships of both the MCBI and BRC Drivers' Championships, and that has lived up to the hype, and we cannot wait for 2026. Thank you all for following our pages and for liking our post over the 2 epic weekends. Please like and subscribe and see you next time on the stages.